Hello and welcome to episode number 14 of the Backyard Watch podcast. I am your host, Jeffrey White, and Merry Christmas from everyone here at Channel 1138. We are airing live to talk about a whole bunch of jolly things tonight. My co-host, Mr. Eric Wall Jr., will be on shortly, but I am proud to be here, and I have a special guest with me. I have Mr. Chris Sequel, the founder... he's the founder of Channel 1138, yes. But he's also one of the hosts of the Star Wars Underworld podcast. And how are you doing, Chris?
I'm doing great, Jeff, and I'd like to wish a holly jolly hypeness to all of our listeners.
Very holly, very, very jolly, very hype. Thanks for being on today. And how was your Christmas?
It's been great. I've gotten lots of cool Star Wars things. The coolest thing, I got a bunch of Star Wars socks, which is great. I'm excited. It's like it has some of R2, D2, and Darth Vader on them, and I think the other one's a Stormtrooper, but I can't quite recall.
Stormtrooper.
Yeah, so it's good. So if I can't wear the Stormtrooper socks, though, because I won't be able to aim straight when I'm walking, I'll just go right into a wall.
Oh. And with the Stormtrooper socks, you cannot aim with your feet, so you'd just be bumping to everything.
No, but I mean, the R2 socks will be great because then they have little jet packs on them, so
Ooh.
I can just fly with them. I just have to try not to choke on my Darth Vader socks.
I mean, you will choke on your aspirations, Chris.
We had asparagus for dinner tonight, so of course I brought out the line: "Try not to choke on your asparagus."
Man, my Christmas was pretty jolly. I got a couple cool things for Christmas, including the soundtrack to Star Wars The Last Jedi. I've been listening to it all afternoon.
Nice.
It's super hype. I got the Rogue One novelization.
Ooh, that's cool.
I haven't read it yet, but I think it's really good. It's interesting, Chris. I got the Force Awakens novel last year, 1 year after that movie. And then now I get Rogue One this year. I think I'm going to get The Last Jedi next year,
And that actually makes sense because this year, for the first time, the novel I don't think is coming out at the same time as the movie. I think we have to wait a few weeks for that. So, you couldn't have gotten it this year, even if that was the way you did it.
Yeah,
It works. It works.
And I think there was one more Star Wars thing I got. There was I got this cool Lego Darth Vader watch.
Oh. Nice. I know what you're talking about. I've seen those. Those are the Lego watches are awesome. I think I got a really cheap one that wasn't a Star Wars one. It was just like a generic Technic watch when I was 10. Yeah, it was a long time ago, but I've never gotten a Star Wars one, I don't think. I think I got a Star Wars pen, Lego pen or something. It was some weird thing. Yeah, it had see-through view on it. I don't know where that thing went.
Holy cow.
It's in a box.
And in addition to that, I got this new Blue Yeti microphone which is why I sound a little different than what I used to sound on the Backyard Watch podcast.
No, I was saying to Jeff before we went live that he sounded different, and at first I couldn't tell why, and then I realized it's because he sounds finally like he does in person. So I was kept looking over my shoulder. And he wasn't behind me, and I was kind of surprised.
And let's put some context to this. Both Chris and I were involved in #JediPod. Yes. That was that great Channel 1138 crossover that occurred across the Channel 1138 Mixler and the Facebook page Star Wars Episode 8 News. Yes. And we did a good, jolly 4-hour podcast a couple Saturdays ago just talking about Star Wars The Last Jedi. And I'll say it was an honor meeting everyone, seeing all these podcast people in person. It was very illuminating. It was nice to meet Chris for the second time because I've met him before. And it's just really cool being around a bunch of Star Wars fans talking about Star Wars.
Yeah, that was such an amazing experience. That show is always kind of our favorite show of the year, and it's cool because like originally it was just kind of a crossover between the Underworld podcast and the IPC podcast. So basically, it was the Underworld plus Zach, and that was what it was like the first 2 years, and it was really fun. And I think this year it kind of almost became like a Channel 1138 crossover show because we had like 4 shows represented, and then another show that wasn't even Channel 1138.
Oh yeah.
So that's what I hopefully like every year it just gets bigger and bigger until like almost every show is represented. Like that would be so cool.
Man, just this big old crossover, everyone being it. That would be so jolly, so hype.
Yeah.
Man, so
Oh yeah.
So with that being said, let's get to the heart of things. Let's get to the meat of what we want to talk about on the back.
Let's get to the porg of what we're talking about.
Porgs. Oh man, it's kind of funny. Dominic Jones, the other co-host of the SWU podcast, he loves the way I say porg. I'm like porgs, and like so much so that Dominic even said that my sound of the porg sounds better than the actual porg sounds.
It does. Right.
But yeah, let's talk a little bit about The Last Jedi. Chris, you've seen it a lot. You saw it 4 times with us and for the crossover, and you saw it a couple times at your house, near your house. And so,
yes.
What do you think of the movie now? I know you and I personally have talked a lot about it, but I'm wondering what you think about it now after seeing it.
Well, oh gosh, you know how there's kind of a thing with, I don't know, like your siblings or like your family members or like cousins where like you can kind of tease them and pick on them and it's like fine and it's funny, but like if somebody like a stranger were to like do that, you'd get really mad and defend them. Like you kind of know how that is.
Kind
like,
of.
Yeah, that's how I feel about The Last Jedi. Like it's part of the Star Wars family. It's a Star Wars movie. So of course it's a really cool movie and it's really enjoyable to watch. And I've seen it 5 times. I'm going to see it for a 6th time in like 48 hours. And it's definitely it's Star Wars. It's great, but like inside the family, I mean, it's like, you can pick on it a lot because there's a lot of things in it that are just kind of crazy. And
Very
so
true.
I enjoy kind of making fun of the movie and saying, oh, it's like the worst Star Wars movie and it sucks and the Star Wars Holiday Special is better and like all this stuff. And it's like I kind of really think that way, like within Star Wars, like the little sphere that is Star Wars, like I do think that this is kind of the worst and there's some kind of embarrassing things in it for Star Wars, but obviously like it's still Star Wars, and I would still defend it to anyone who's like not a Star Wars fan, and I would still recommend that everybody watch it at least once or twice. And, so that's kind of how I stand on it. So obviously I don't like Revenge of the Sith either. I hate on that film all the time. It's my least favorite Star Wars film before Last Jedi. But I've still seen it a bunch of times, and I'm gonna watch. If someone says you want to sit down and watch it, I'm not gonna say no. Like it's still a fun movie with lots of cool stuff in it.
So we're gonna continue in a moment. Just would like to welcome my co-host of the Backyard Watch podcast, Mr. Eric Wall. Hello, Eric.
Hello. I'm back.
Sanity is here. Sanity. because I'm really curious to hear. I'm glad you're here, Eric, and I'm glad that Jeff has chosen this topic to talk about when you've come back, because you're like one of the few people who I actually haven't talked to about the movie. Like, I remember somebody saying that you said to somebody else that you thought it wasn't that good, but I might be wrong because I heard it through so many other people.
Okay. So that was my first impression of the movie.
Okay. So you're basically
it was
like
one of those
everyone.
things that like just like it sat with me, and the more that I thought about the movie, the more I liked it. And after watching it again, I really liked it more.
Yeah, I think that's the case with pretty much everybody. Like I hear that. Like it's like everybody doesn't like it the first time. Mm-hmm. Like it's so weird.
I would say out of all 9, I'm sorry. But yeah, out of all 9, I would say that it rests right in the middle.
Yeah.
I don't want to I mean, I kind of am. I kind of did this on the Wastelands Fan and Fraternity crossover last week, but I don't really want to compare it. I don't know. I think it's too early. We should wait till we start doing marathons.
The thing is Jeff is a closet Last Jedi fanboy. Like I know you really like the movie, Jeff, and you just kind of like are afraid to defend it really hardly. Because I remember when basically this is what happened when we went to see the film. The way that we had made the seats, it was weird because there was there were these big reclining seats. So there weren't a lot of seats in the theater. And we got 16 seats and there were like 4 rows of 4 seats. And unfortunately, because of that, Jeff ended up being the odd person out and wasn't able to sit with me, Dominic, Ben, and Zach.
That sucks.
Because otherwise, we would have had you right there. But because, he was like the rookie, we're like, okay, I guess he's the one that gets to sit back with everybody else. So me and Zach and Ben Dominic, we're all watching the movie and it ends and we basically all look at each other like, what the heck was that? And then, so we're all like trying to figure out like what we just saw and we're like, I don't know if we like this. And then we look back at Jeff and he has like his hands on his head and he's just like, wow, that was awesome. And so like we're walking out of the theater and Jeff's just like hyped and like emotionally like overwhelmed. And then like everybody else is just like, ugh. and then after that, through the process of us doing like 2 podcasts, it was a process of everybody trying to like the movie and Jeff trying to figure out why everybody didn't like it and trying to agree with it.
It was kind of like that, Chris. The second viewing that we did on the next day, on Friday, like I noticed all the plot holes, all the plot flaws within it. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like, I put my critical thinking cap on that I usually do when I play video games or watch videos, and it's just like, yeah, there are issues with the way the plot's being told, and while the rest of you guys were all like, okay, I like the movie, it's not the worst movie ever, I like The Last Jedi, and I'm just like, oh, it's pretty bad.
It seems to be the reaction that everybody has. Either they watch it and they see all the flaws right away and then they have to like watch it a few more times to like really appreciate it, or they watch it and they love it and then it's kind of ruined by all the other people hating on it and saying all the issues with it.
So like, what did you think about this, Eric?
All right, again, the more that I think about the movie, the more I like it, but at the same time I have a lot of flaws with the movie. Like, Canto Bite is the biggest thing. It's more that should not be in the movie all that much. Even though me and Jeff were talking beforehand and we both really like the Canto Bite theme song.
True, that's actually the best part of that. I agree.
Yeah. But then, okay, so here goes another thing. So the same thing that like people are like seeing as a good thing, and then on the other hand, people are also saying it's a bad thing, and then people are saying that the good thing is a bad thing, and then it really like confuses me sometimes. Like, what do people like? What do people not like?
The issue is that I think that the most common criticism that I think underscores every negative thing is that it wasn't a good mixing of elements in the movie. Right. Like, how there's certain foods that you really like you might really like hamburgers and you might like ice cream, but you never put ice cream inside a hamburger bun and eat it.
That would just be weird.
I think that's the issue. And if you would, what would you say? Would you say the issue is the ice cream or the hamburger bun? Because technically you like both, but I think that's the problem with this movie is there's a lot of things that just don't fit together really well. So if you look at the scenes kind of by themselves, you're like, oh, that's actually pretty cool. But when you think of it in the context of the movie, you're like, that shouldn't have been in it because it doesn't fit with everything else. Like, I think that's what's going on.
The Canto Bite stuff it would work good as a Rebels episode or something,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But in the whole of this like entire movie, it's just weird for no reason.
Yeah.
Not even that it's weird. It's just out of place more than anything.
Yeah, no, the plot is just I want to do with exercise like when I have a lot of free time on my hands. I want to watch all the Star Wars movies, and I want to create like a plot tree. Like I want to make some type of graph that shows like all of the like plot lines, and then all the times that the scenes change and bounce between them. And my theory is that The Last Jedi is just going to be messy. It's going to be like all these lines. And,
so many scribbles.
I definitely thought about that too. That was one of my biggest criticisms. That, and for some reason, God, I think you're starting to like pull me back to not liking this movie.
Jeff, hang up on me now.
No, but I don't know. I think it's too much like a Marvel movie. Like the problems that I had with Thor Ragnarok, because I'm not a big fan of Thor Ragnarok. I'm going to say this right now. I do not like that movie all that much. And it's the same thing for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. I was watching something earlier and they were like, this is like almost beat for beat a lot of stuff that they did in Guardians of the Galaxy. And I don't know. It's more that the villains, for some reason, take a backseat in a lot of cases. And it feels like a Marvel movie, and I don't like that for some reason.
Are you saying you don't like Marvel movies?
I don't like Marvel movies are Marvel movies.
It's like how I feel about the new Star Trek films. I feel like they're like Star Wars movies, and that's kind of conflicting to me because like I like Star Wars movies, so I think they're cool from that perspective. But also, it just doesn't feel like Star Trek, so that makes me not like them because I want to see. I'm going to a Star Trek movie to see a Star Trek movie, not a Star Wars movie. Like
Yeah, like the more that I watch Marvel movies, the more I hate them. For some reason, I don't know.
They're the types of movies that I'll usually only watch once and enjoy them, but very rarely will I go back and watch a Marvel movie a second time. Like I've seen Avengers and Guardians twice, and maybe Deadpool, and that's like it.
So, Chris, what do you think is the rewatchability of The Last Jedi? Will you watch it a lot of times?
Yeah, it's rewatchable because there's all these great elements in it, and it's just like. They don't mix, but you can kind of ignore that once you realize that. Like when I'm watching the movie for the first time, I'm realizing for the first time, like, oh man, this is not put together right. There's some issues with how these things are, and that like felt really bad to feel that way because I wanted this movie to be like great, and it wasn't. And so, but then once I accept that and say, all right, I accept the fact that this movie's not perfect, that there are issues with it, that doesn't quite fit, then I can sit and actually enjoy it for what it is. You know?
Actually, something I didn't really... There's going to be a lot of little great details that people don't realize unless they watch it a few times. Like, for example, I didn't know until the fourth viewing that Rey kept the original Jedi texts, that she took him. I had no idea. There was no inclination, except for a little bit at the very end.
Yeah, that was that one. There's a few things that people didn't pick up. A lot of people didn't pick up the boy using the Force to pick up the broom either.
Yeah, I didn't notice until my third viewing. Yeah.
I was like,
whoa, he used the Force. What?
What's funny with the books is every time I watch it, I realize a new part to that storyline. And the newest thing, the last time I watched it, I got something completely new. And I've not heard anyone talk about this yet. Before Rey gets into the escape pod of the Millennium Falcon, the thing that looks like a coffin, and goes down to Snoke's ship to meet Kylo.
Oh,
when they start that scene, Eric, you saw it. When they start that scene, she's shutting a drawer. You can't see what's in the drawer, but you see her slamming a door shut right before she goes to walk into the escape pod. And of course, you have no idea watching the movie the first time what's going on. And the second and third time, I didn't realize it either. And then the fourth time or fifth time, I'm like, wait a minute, that's the same drawer that the books were in. She was slamming the door shut with the books in it.
It's funny. About like the Luke scene, like the last kind of like Luke scene when he's on Crate. Mm-hmm. I didn't notice like that there weren't footprints. I just kind of figured that maybe he just became
I haven't
one with
noticed
the Force.
That yet. Okay, now there's okay. You just
people keep saying it. Okay, I'm like,
this blows my mind because this explains something. And I noticed throughout the movie that they were making a big deal about the footprints on Crate because I'm like, why did they put salt on the ground? Why did they make it red and white? And then I noticed when they were fighting, you could see, Kylo was moving his feet and making those red prints. And I'm like, why are they focusing so much on that? And I didn't realize why. And that's okay. So now there's something in the 6th viewing I'll be looking for. So I'm excited. Thank you.
Does Luke make any real salt steps?
I honestly feel kind of stupid because I really thought he was there the first time I watched it. Like that the whole thing went completely over my head.
Wait,
and that's
even
because
even when he winked to 3PO?
Yeah, even then. Like it wasn't until he disappeared not when he disappeared, but when Kylo put the saber through his chest, that's when I kind of knew. That's when I knew he wasn't there. But before that, I was I honestly thought that he was trying to pull an Obi-Wan stunt. I thought he was going to try to sacrifice himself. That's where my head was at that point.
I thought that he already did, perhaps.
Yeah, and actually that's what I thought too. When Kyle put the saber through him, I'm like, what? Did Luke just die and become a Force ghost and off screen? That was my first thought until they cut back on the island.
I think the weird thing about that was still in the end, Luke died. That
have to happen? Did it have to really?
They do kind of say that stuff like that would kill somebody at the beginning.
That's true. That's a good point. Yeah, I didn't
Kylo,
pick up on that.
Kylo mentions when him and Rey have a connection. He's like, if you did this, then you would die.
That's a good pickup. But I think the thing that made me kind of think that
oh my God, that's awesome.
It wasn't 1-to-1 was then obviously someone still did it and that person didn't die. And that's Snoke. So basically the rule is that someone can connect to other people, but they can't connect themselves, I guess. That's how it works.
That's really, man, it's just a weird thing because it's so new.
Okay, so to be fair, Luke did have to project himself to everyone, including 3PO somehow. So
yeah, and that's a really interesting thing. It's how can a droid be tricked by the Force? That's a new thing.
Yeah.
So clearly he's actually there. He's somehow actually put his image there. He's not going into people's minds like that character from Marvel at some point. Someone did that. Somebody has that power.
What's up, Eric?
I'm thinking what his name is.
Describe him.
David Tennant's character, right? From Jessica Jones.
Oh, yeah, he does that too. There's multiple ones that do that.
Yeah, that's true.
But
God, I don't remember David Tennant's character in Jessica Jones.
The only
Kilroy?
Yeah, Kilgrave, I think.
Kilgrave. There we go.
Yeah, Kilgrave. It's basically, and maybe that's another reason why it feels like a Marvel movie, because you have basically Marvel superpowers.
Right. But I don't know. People keep pointing out that it's kind of similar to what they did in Heir to the Empire. Is that the series that they did something similar?
In Heir to the Empire, I don't remember a projection. I remember it was all about a clone, and it's Mara needed to kill Luke, and the way that they got away with her not actually killing him was because they cloned him, and she killed his clone.
Yeah, I do remember. Okay. I'm thinking about which one's the one that Luke turns evil.
Oh, that's Dark Empire.
Oh, okay.
I actually don't remember that.
You mean Dark Force Rising?
No. I don't remember Luke turning evil in the Thrawn books. I thought that there was an evil version of Luke that was a clone of him, but I don't remember the actual Luke being evil. No, but I mean, in Dark Empire, there's an evil Luke, I think, which is a comic book series.
Hold up.
So, Chris, So, Chris, I think everyone wants to know the thing everybody wants to talk about. What do you think of the Porgs?
I don't have any problems. I thought that that all the stuff with the creatures and droids in this film was great. I didn't have any problems with it. I mean, honestly, there's only if they had just a few things were different. I would really not have that many issues with this film. Most of my things are just it's like a snowball effect where like because there's so many problems, it makes it all seem worse. Like, you know, it makes all the little issues worse because there's a few big issues. Like I don't like the way that they handled Leia and like the Leia in space scene. I thought that was kind of weird, and I don't like the way that they had the dialogue with Snoke and Rey that was basically copied from the dialogue between the Emperor and Luke. Like I don't think there's really good explanation for why he would say the same exact lines, you know, like unless it was like, obviously I've heard the fan theory that he was like a fanboy of the Emperor and he was like just trying to like quote him to seem cool.
I have an idea though.
But how would he know that quote?
Exactly. That's my problem. They don't explain. That's the issue, is that there's a lot of things where you can come up with explanations for why things happen in this film. But the issue is you have to come up with the explanations because they don't present them in the movie. Like they don't present really well why Kylo betrays Snoke. It's like a surprise to everyone. And like, it's a different thing for Star Wars because Star Wars usually shows you, like tips you off what the characters are going to do. Whereas in this situation, you see this movie through Rey's perspective, and everything that Luke and Kylo does is a surprise because you don't actually see their perspectives in this film, which seems really weird for a Star Wars film.
Which is weird because, like, other than the Octo sequence, Rey isn't very relevant in the movie.
No, but she the reason why she isn't is because she's the viewer. Like I see throughout these two movies, you're basically, if you're playing like a campaign, you know, in a first person like story game, you're Rey. Like that's your character. Like that's how these films are set up. And honestly, like it's just different. Like it's not bad. It's just a different way of handling things. Because Star Wars generally, you're everybody. You know, you're seeing things from Vader's perspective as much as you're seeing it from Luke's. You know, you're seeing, you know, Anakin's side of things and Obi-Wan's side of things and Padme's side of things in the prequels. And like nothing really surprises you when it happens because it's explained why everybody makes the choices that they do. Whereas with these films, you're seeing it as one character, and when one character doesn't have information about something, the viewer, you don't have that information either. Oh. So Rey is surprised by Kylo turning because she thinks he's about to kill her, and so the audience is too, and that's kind of weird for a Star Wars movie.
I think from the perspective, it's not just Rey. We're also seeing it from Finn and Poe. And
we are, but those stories they're not as badly done. They're just kind of, they're almost like filler stories, like, and there's some issues with them, but they're not like, again, that's like the B story. Like it makes it seem like a TV show.
A joke I heard from my favorite video game website, Easy Allies. They were talking about The Last Jedi, and they call the Finn and Rose thing in Cancel By, they call it a side quest.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what it is. That's what it is. It's the giant side quest, and it's kind of weird that they need to fill time in a film that's so long. Like I was so excited when I heard that this movie would be 2.5 hours because I'm like, oh man, that means they're gonna have like lots of stuff about the main storyline, and it's gonna be really long, and they're gonna have lots of character development and exposition, like all this great stuff that we didn't get.
A couple good Snoke scenes, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. I thought all the things that we were missing in The Force Awakens, I thought we were gonna get, and then what ends up happening is that there's 2 hours of good story and then a half hour of like, well, let's just add it to have it. And that makes no sense. You didn't even need that to have a long enough movie.
I don't think, like, I doubt Rian Johnson ever went to it thinking, oh, it's filler. I think what happened is they were great ideas. They just didn't fit in with the overall context of the story.
No. Like, again, it would be a good story to tell like as a TV episode or a book or something. And I think it's because they're like, oh, well, we need to continue to focus on the characters that we established. Like, you know, JJ and Lawrence Kasdan and Michael Arndt already came up with Finn and Poe, so we need to keep telling their stories. Like, they didn't have the guts to say, you know what, there's really nothing there's nothing important about these characters anymore, so we're just not going to show them. Like, that's what they should have done. And it would have made some people mad, but it would have made the movie better.
Something I'm glad they did with Unkar Plutt, I heard rumors that he was going to be in the film, but he was not. So, I mean, because you can tell, like, the other one, Maz Kanata, got the filler treatment in the movie.
Oh yeah, Maz Kanata was the worst example of just throwing something in for the heck of it. Like, couldn't they had that person they called be Lando instead of Maz? Like, it would have been so much better. Like, oh my gosh, that would have been great. Everybody would have cheered like Billy DEA, and then it's a way to do it without like having him have to be in the bunch of the movie, and like it would have been great.
It would have been so cool if the master code breaker was actually Lando.
Yeah, that too. Like, there's so many spots where there were just random people or characters where it could have been Lando. Like, there's like at least 3 roles he could have been, and he could have been in Maz's position, the person that they call to get told where the code breaker is, or he could have been the code breaker, or he could have been Benicio del Toro's character DJ as well. Like, he could have filled all 3 of those roles perfectly, and yet they come up with 2 new characters and reuse an old one that doesn't need to come back.
That would scare me though, because I would be afraid that they would just kill off Lando or make him betray.
None of those characters died. None of those characters died. So literally, they could have swapped it out. It wouldn't have changed the story at all.
Right. I was so sure that Finn was going to die. I was so sure.
Yeah, I was.
There's so many fake outs.
Yeah.
There were a lot. There were 2 fake outs with Finn. You thought he was dead twice. Once you thought Phasma knocked him down over that ledge.
Oh, yeah.
But like, I'll kind of give him like that led to. Here's the thing: both of the fake outs with Ben led to 2 of the best lines in the movie. So I understand, and I think a lot of the issues of this movie is I think it was written backwards. I think Rian Johnson was like, "All right, I want someone to say the line, we can't, fight what we hate. We have to fight for what we love. And I want someone to say the line, I'm rebel scum. Like, that's so cool." And then he's like, "Okay, now how do I get the characters in the position to say these lines?" And then he comes up
to build
like,
this.
Yeah. And I think that's how the whole movie feels. It's like it feels like it's all built backwards into these moments. And it's just, it's not a natural progression of how a story should go. It doesn't make sense.
What I will say is I don't mind the fake out of Leia dying, but not actually dying.
Oh my!
I don't mind it because we had such an emotional moment with Luke and Leia, and during the Battle of Crate. Like that was. I was listening to the music of it earlier, and I was in tears.
It is.
Eric, you seem very passionate about this.
Okay. I don't like that scene in general. But one, the flying part or floating part. Yeah. And 2, they killed off Akbar.
Yes.
Oh, no.
And mentioned it for like a second. And they're like, "Oh yeah, okay. Akbar's dead."
Fun fact, when we were doing our immediate reactions for the Star Wars on the Road podcast, and when we were talking about that scene, we were just talking about Leia and whatnot. Nobody mentioned Akbar, and I don't think people were thinking about it until I mentioned it. It's like Akbar is dead. Oh man.
Okay. Yeah. So as soon as that happened, I like turned to my dad and I said, "They killed Akbar." Like, okay, so I kind of just figured Leia's not dead. Come on.
Yeah.
There's probably a way that she's going to survive that because of trailers that we've already seen that show her at Crate. Yeah. But yeah, I love Akbar. Admiral Akbar is one of my favorite characters in Star Wars.
Eric, did you squeal when Akbar was in the tutorial arcade mode in the first EA Battlefront?
Oh, I love that. I love that part. No, not really.
You have any thoughts, Chris?
No, I agree. Like it's kind of like it's like you're meant in that scene to care about Leia when you don't even need to. It's like a complete fake out, and there's absolutely no emotional resonance given to Akbar and his passing at all. They just mention it. Like no. I mean, look at so Holdo, and actually it's not even Holdo saying it, right? It's that other the long nosed chick who is saying it.
Like, who are you? I have to look in the visual dictionary to find out who she is.
Yeah. Oh my God. They make it way too. They point it out like way too much.
But the issue is, there's a great scene in Return of the Jedi with the actress that plays Mon Mothma, and when she says many Bothans died to bring us this information, it's like amazing acting. Like she looks kind of away into the distance. Like she looks like she's kind of tearing up a little bit. And it's like, it's perfect. And like, you don't even know who the Bothans are. Like we didn't even know what Bothans looked like until they drew them in comic books. Like, so how many years later after that? Like, and yet you feel all this emotion for these characters that you don't even know in that scene just because it's written and acted so well. And then you got this long-nosed chick who's just like, Akbar's dead.
Like, hey, she did her best.
They really do like point that out. Like they zoom in on the nose at one point, basically.
She's a bizarre character that it's like she's only there to like she doesn't need to be there. Like the character doesn't need to exist.
So
go ahead, Eric.
Okay, so I was going to say that what I've been hearing from people is that if you replaced Akbar's, Holdo's role for Akbar, like put him in the chair and make him like go through hyperspace into the fleet, that would have made for a better.
Yes.
Because the difficulty I have with Holdo's development is that she was developed as the anti-Poe. The movie tried to present it as, oh man, she's a bad girl, Poe's way's better. They tried to present it like that. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, she was doing the right thing all along. So I didn't feel as much emotion when she did, do the hyperspace thing.
Yeah, they're trying to, I think, bring forth the message that, like, even if two people are disagreeing with each other, they both can be right. Like, I think that was kind of what they were trying to go with that. And like, you're built up to think that she's a bad person, the whole time. And then, they're like, oh no, she's actually good. And this is a lesson, like, just because you disagree with someone, and like, I mean, it's good when you watch it. There's so many things in this movie that don't make sense until you know what happens first. Yeah. And then you watch it again and you're like, okay, like that makes sense. And you pick up like the little things and like you appreciate what she did more because you know the whole time what she's doing. But like, it just sucks the first time you watch it because you're just like, what?
I will admit, I do like it. I do like hearing Leia explain it to Poe because, we all trust Leia. Leia knows what she's doing. So
but again, it's like, it is kind of condescending though, because, they're just like, they treat him kind of like a child when like they don't need to. I feel like
and that kind of
the Poe stuff was dumb. Like I'm sorry, the more I think about it, the more I dislike what they did with him in this movie. Like I think it was kind of pointless.
And that'll lead me to the other part of the film that was very interesting. At the end of The Force Awakens, the last time we saw the Resistance, they were victorious, they destroyed Starkiller Base, they were waving at the Millennium Falcon as they were going on to Ahch-To. We saw 3PO with his repaired arm, and Leia, and BB-8, and everyone there. And now that we see them, they're evacuating Dakar, and the First Order's getting them. All of a sudden, they're screwed, even though we didn't have much indication of that in the previous film. What do you all think about how the Resistance was presented in this compared to TFA? That's the Force Awakens. It's TFA.
I didn't think there were any issues with the continuity there. I think it all makes sense. I think the one thing that maybe was an issue was that they explained a lot of things in the opening crawl that might have been better if it had been just shown on screen. Like, this movie does feel kind of small because it focuses so heavily on just like kind of the relationship between Hux, Snoke, and Kylo in the First Order. And then it focuses on Luke and Rey, and then it focuses on the side quest. And that's it. Like, that's all the movie is. And it doesn't, and I think that Force Awakens had a little bit of that issue too, because like you see Hosni and Prime being blown up, and they just kind of show it for like a few seconds before, and you're supposed to like feel bad that it gets blown up, when they could have spent some more time earlier in the movie dealing with those characters a little bit and making you kind of understand what was going on more. And I think this movie had this issue too, where it tells you the First Order is out, overrunning the whole galaxy and taking everything over, and yet you never see any of that. Like, you don't see why the First Order is bad necessarily in this film. Like, the only thing you get is, you go on Cantobite and you see all these rich people who made money off of weapons, and then you have Rose's like personal story about weapons testing on her homeworld. But again, you don't see that. It's just told to you. I
will say this, Chris. There's this, and I'm sure you've played this too, Eric. I think it's called the Resurrection expansion of Star Wars Battlefront 2.
Yeah.
And this is story expansion that this kind of explains the power that the First Order has throughout the galaxy. This is a couple of rebels. They are, this is during The Force Awakens. They are breaching, I forgot which Star Destroyer it was, but they are breaching that in order to find more information about the First Order's power and send it to the Resistance. Do you have more details on this, Eric?
No, not really. Oh. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to play that, and that'll be interesting. I think it will be great. See, the thing with The Force Awakens is I'm like, okay, there's missing things, but I'm sure they're gonna pick it up at certain points in other mediums, and like it's gonna be the case with this movie too.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's gonna be more well-rounded once they add some of these things, but it's just like, it's frustrating when you have a movie that's so long that clearly they're okay with it being a long movie, but yet they put a lot of unnecessary stuff in it when it could have been stuff that kind of had more meaning and answered more questions. Like, going to Canto Pike doesn't answer any questions that we have. It doesn't explain anything. It's literally just filling up time. And as we know, what they get there ends up being of no use to them. So
Canto Bite could have been any other planet, honestly.
The best line of the film that kind of explains kind of what the film is when Finn says, "We don't have a master codebreaker, we have a codebreaker." So I think it kind of reinforces that disappointing notion we all originally had.
Yeah, we don't have the Canto Bite scene, we have a Canto Bite scene. I don't know. And again, it's like you could have used that time to explain and show some things that explain the First Order a little bit better, but these movies are very plot driven. They're very much just like, how do we move the characters around to different places?
Something I will say that I think was done really well, and that it was explained, was Luke and Rey. Why Luke cut himself off from the Force, why Kylo turned against him, that we kind of saw in The Force Awakens. We never saw the Knights of Ren, unfortunately, but we kind of had some clarity on Kylo's motivations.
I'm really hoping that we see the Knights of Ren in Episode 9. Like, they gotta be somewhere. And like with Snoke gone, Kyle needs some backup,
Or maybe we'll get another disappointing revelation that the Knights of Ren were all killed when Starkiller Base was destroyed.
You literally took the words right out of my mouth.
Well, hopefully that's what Colin Trevorrow and his writer were doing, and that's why they fired them.
And so now J.J. Abrams is like, no, they're going to be pivotal in the story.
Yeah, I hope he goes back and, kind of fills in some things that he left kind of vague in his movie. That would be good.
I do. So what was your guys' favorite character? Mine personally was Luke Skywalker, because Mark Hamill is the man.
I thought Mark Hamill did a really good job acting. It's really hard for me to pick a favorite character, though. Like, I don't know. I think I have to... It's going to be a while till I can answer that question.
Mine is Yoda.
Yoda was pretty good. He doesn't deserve as much of the criticism as he's getting.
That's another thing. Like, I hear a lot of people saying that was really good, and then I hear some people saying that it was really bad, and I'm just like, I really like that entire
thing. A main thing Chris and I that Chris was talking about during the week that we first saw the movie was the lighting on Yoda.
Yeah.
I'm wondering what you think about it now.
No, I mean, now that I've seen it so many times, I'm used to it, so it doesn't bother me anymore. But
yeah, it looks dark green.
They could have lit the first, when he's in the first location before he like jumps and appears again. Like the first location is a little funky. Like there's something that they could have done better with that, because the issue is that thing was, I don't know. It's really tough. I think it's just if they had shot that slightly differently, it would have been, I think less people would have been mad about it. Because I think that I don't see why people shouldn't have issues with after he moves and he's got like the fire like behind him or whatever, or in front of him. Like that was great. Like I thought that looked perfect. That looked exactly like he did in Empire Strikes Back. Like I didn't see any differences. So that was really, really great. But yeah, the other stuff was not, it was a little bit different,
What were your thoughts, Eric, about it?
I cry every time I watch that scene. I'll be honest right now. I love that scene. That is literally my favorite scene in the entire movie.
I have a theory that every time I watch the film, I actually like the nostalgic scenes more. Like, the stuff with like Luke and Leia and the stuff with Yoda and like the things that are meant to be like real, like emotional scenes in the movie. Like I actually feel them more clearly now that I've seen the movie so many times, because when I first watched them, I was just so kind of like discombobulated by the stuff I didn't like and that surprised me, that I couldn't like focus on the good parts as much and really feel correctly. And here's the thing. I think that the people working on the film, especially Rian Johnson, but everybody else, the people helping him with editing and like all those people, like I think because they saw so many different versions of the film and because they knew what the story was, they're obviously not going to be mad at their own story or disappointed by their own story, or otherwise they wouldn't have written it. So when they're watching the film for like the last time, making sure that it flows right, they've seen it so many times that they can't go into it like a person who's never seen it before and think about how would I react to it. And I think that's why, like, all of us, when we think of our second, third, fourth viewings of the films, that's how the people working on it thought we'd all feel, because that's how they felt because they had seen it in their heads so many times or had already seen earlier versions of it. And I think that there wasn't any person that was powerful enough or that they trusted or was influential enough to go and sit down and watch it blind, not knowing anything, and then to tell them, as a movie, just sitting down and watching it, this kind of sucks. Like, no one did that.
I'll counter that with this, Chris.
Yeah.
What about the reshoots that they did for Rogue One? The ones that they probably did for Solo. Like Rogue One, it for the most part, it worked as a film. Even with the reshoots, even when you see the editors, they've probably seen the old versions of it so many times and the new versions so many times. And yet, a lot of us think Rogue One's better than The Last Jedi.
I do.
Rogue One's definitely better than The Last Jedi by like however you measure it. Like, it's better, I think. And there's only one person on our channel that disagrees with that, and he can go shove it somewhere.
Does he actually?
I mean,
what I'm trying to say is that
the question is, why is this Why is this film different than the other two? Why did the other two get rewrites and reshoots? And I think, I think maybe it has to do with the fact that Michael Arndt and Gary Whitta, who were both the original writers, I think. Was it Gary Whitta? Or did he? I think so, right? Didn't Gary Whitta start the Rogue One screenplay? I think.
Michael Arndt did The Force Awakens.
Yeah.
And I think it was. That name sounds familiar.
Yeah, but then I know that Kaz didn't. Yeah, I think it was Whitta. Okay, so Whitta and Arndt wrote movies that I think were slightly different movies. Like they didn't have a lot of Star Wars-y things in them. Like not as much. They weren't like overloads of nostalgia and like similar themes and things. And I think the executives went in and read those scripts and were like, this is just not Star Wars enough. Like it doesn't. People aren't gonna like. Some people will like it, but not enough people are gonna like it. It's not enough to restart the franchise and like completely do all the things that A New Hope did, because it's not like A New Hope enough. So I think they had, J.J. Abrams come in, and they had what's his name, Henry Gilroy come in with Rogue One, and kind of like alter things to make those films feel more Star Warsy. Like especially with The Force Awakens, there's all these things that are just so similar to the other films, and then Rogue One too has a lot of like references and callbacks and things like Ponda Baba showing up and C-3PO and like all these things that probably were reshoot things, I would guess. And here's the thing to finish that with what Rian Johnson did is he saw what went wrong with those two first movies and how the executives responded. And he said, "Oh, I'm going to write all my stuff in first. I'm going to put Luke in there. I'm going to put Yoda in there. Like I'm going to put all the things in there so that when they see the script, they'll be like, all right, it checks all the boxes, so we don't need to change anything." And that's probably. And they said, "All right, well, the script has all the on paper. It looks like a good Star Wars movie because it's got all the Star Wars moments in it. People will like this. It will tickle people's member berries." And and then they didn't scrutinize it after that, and they should have. They should have looked at it deeper and said, this is just because it has the nostalgic moments doesn't necessarily mean it's a great film the way it's constructed.
Well, that is very true. You make a great point, Chris. And you've been on for a while now. You said you'd only be on for a little bit, and you're still on now. Thank you so much for being on here. But before you go, Chris, I just want to see your hype factor. See, right now, whether it's a Christmas thing or a Star Wars thing or whatever, what are you most hyped about, most excited about right now?
So I got some Hasbro Black Series figures for Christmas. Ooh. And I got the Finn in the First Order disguise. And then I got the Rey, the new Jedi training Rey. And I noticed that the Finn, his hat comes off. And so I put the hat on Rey, and I noticed that it fits perfectly. And she actually looks really good with the First Order hat on. And so I'm at New Hampshire visiting my family, and those are the only figures that I have on me right now because I just got them. But I have my whole collection back in California. So when I go back to California, I'm going to grab the Kylo Ren figure, and I'm going to grab Kylo's lightsaber. I'm going to give the lightsaber to Rey. And I'm going to do a photo shoot with Kylo and Rey's going to have the First Order hat and the lightsaber. And it's going to be like an alternate universe if Rey actually did join Kylo and join the First Order. It's
Reylo.
Exactly. That's what I'm going to do. I'm hyped. I'm hyped for that.
Man. Well, thank you for being on the Backyard Watch podcast on this special Christmas Jolly Hype-Miss edition of the show. Where can we hear you or find you next, Chris?
Follow my Twitter, Seek3PO, SEEK 3PO. And I've got some like new things that are going to be coming out in the next like 2 to 6 weeks, I would say. And
it's a big margin.
Yeah, I don't know. Basically, it's just all the stuff that because of the movie and because of traveling for the holidays, I just pushed back all my projects until the beginning of the next year. I'm like, I'll do it in 2018.
When's the Star Wars Underworld podcast coming back?
Star Wars Underworld podcast. We're actually doing. We're recording a show tomorrow. I don't know if it's live or not. It might be. It might not. I'm not 100% sure. But it's going to be on iTunes. Within like the next 48 hours. And it's our Boxing Day show. And it's a show we do every year where we have all like a bunch of other podcasters and like celebrities and stuff come on our show to talk about the new movie. So we've got a lot of people from other podcasts and shows and like things like YouTube channels and writers and, people like that. All those people. So they're going to
coming on.
I think you've already been on our show.
Oh, okay.
I haven't.
This is true. So who knows? Maybe Eric. I think. Let's see. I'm trying to think. Eric, I think you're gonna have to drive to us to get on our show. I think that's that's your best bet. But when we go see Han Solo, or when we see Episode 9, if you are in the same place as us, you will be on our show. That's how we're doing it with the Channel 1138 people. Is we're having the Channel 1138 crossover, and then we do a show again with people who aren't Channel 1138, who are just do like other podcasts and things and other Star Wars related things. And then we have a show.
Or someone else.
Yes, people like that, exactly. And then we also do a show where our Patreon supporters review the film, and we did that last week, so that's on iTunes now.
Yeah, that's a pretty good discussion.
Yeah, that was really fun. So we're getting so many different perspectives on the film, because you can listen to our immediate reactions, you can listen to the Jedi Pod reactions with more people on it. You can listen to our Patreon supporters. That's on iTunes now. And then, after a few days, you'll be able to listen to all of the other Star Wars podcasting and other community,
So there's Jedi Pod, then there'll be Solo Pod, then 9 Pod?
Yeah, we still don't know what Episode 9 is going to be called. It's interesting. The speculation began on that.
Oh, man. Well, thank you for being on, Chris. I hope you have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Happy holidays, Merry all Christmas. That jazz.
You too. Happy Life Day, and may the Force be with you.
Well, that was a very great discussion, Chris. Or what's your name? Eric. That's your name, Eric.
Yes.
Did you have any more to talk about with The Last Jedi that you were dying to say?
Phasma sucks. I don't know if did you guys talk about? I know that we talked a little bit about Snoke. We didn't really talk about Phasma all that much.
I think Phasma had a better role than she did in The Force Awakens.
Oh yeah, she's a background character at most in The Force Awakens.
But yeah, she was kind of an afterthought in the movie. It's really interesting because they set her up as having this cool little saber battle with Finn, and it was going to look so badass and awesome and everything.
Right.
And Finn had a couple great lines in that, with Rebel Scum and all that. But yeah, it kind of stinks they didn't do more. I liked the last thing we saw of her, where we saw her face. That was really cool.
Real quick, do you think that she's dead?
I don't know anymore. Yes and no.
Yeah. That's another thing. Like, Snoke, I'm not even, entirely sure that he's dead. Because when you think about it, in Legends, we did get, transfer essence that, people could do. And if that's something that Snoke could do, that's, a really big problem for the next movie, if that is the case.
If that were the case, Palpatine would still be alive.
Well, not necessarily. If he didn't know how to transfer essence, then...
Well, that's the thing. We don't know much about Snoke and his force powers still.
Right. I think that both of them were they were both really big disappointments. In my honest opinion.
Yeah, now, who's the main villain now? What, Kylo?
Yeah, But even then, I think Rian Johnson said that he still thinks that Kylo Ren is redeemable. But by the time that we were in Return of the Jedi, we knew that Vader wasn't really the, evil Palpatine was. And considering we thought that Snoke would fill that role, and now he's not, it's a little weird. The future of Star Wars is very, 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 up in the air right now.
General Hux will switch sides because Kylo's so bad.
You know what? I wouldn't be surprised.
So, is there any other things that you wanted to talk about before we get into our Episode 9 predictions?
No, I guess we have started that, so might as well go into it.
Yeah, so someone in the Mixler chat, Matt Tapasio, a longtime listener of the channel, says that if Darth Vader can be redeemable, then Kylo Ren should be redeemable. I agree, but what Eric said earlier, was that Vader had his master still there, Palpatine. In this case, Kylo doesn't. So it'll be interesting. Do you have any more thoughts, Eric?
I still think he's redeemable because when you think about it, when Kylo Ren is trying to pull Rey to his side, he's not even trying to pull her to the dark side. He just wants someone to help him out. He even says please at one point. That's the main like that's the entire thing that you should get from that. He says please for Rey to join him. He doesn't say do it or you'll die. You're done for. No, he says please. I still think that he's redeemable in some way.
So, Eric, what are your predictions for episode 9?
You see, the problem with this is this has like an ending that could like possibly be an ending for like a while. I don't know. I would say that we're going to get a time jump. We're definitely going to get a time jump. This one didn't have a time jump. I think we'll have a time jump by maybe like 5 years. That sound reasonable? Like 5 to 10 years? That would honestly make sense. I would also say that in that time jump, we may see Princess Leia die in that entire thing.
Like you think an off-screen death?
Unfortunately, I think that
would suck.
It would suck, but I would also say that maybe we start off with a funeral for Leia, perhaps. Which, you know what? I honestly wouldn't be surprised at that either. Like, I don't know if you remember Civil War, but they have Peggy Carter have an off-screen death.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Yeah. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's something similar to that.
My predictions will be that factions will be irrelevant. The Resistance will die and be wiped out by the First Order. And the First Order will eventually be obliterated because Kylo Ren is an unstable leader. I explored more of this during the Wastelands Phantom Fraternity crossover last Wednesday. But I think Lando's going to come back. Maybe Nien Nunb will have a bigger role. Probably not. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see all these characters try to survive on their own, and it'll be a way of trimming the fat and boiling it down to just a few characters. Just a few characters. And it'll be interesting to see, how people interpret the Force after all that. What Rey will do, what Kylo will do. So I think it'll be centered around that.
So that's another thing that you pointed out. Lando, because we kind of know that. I think at least it's been hinted at that Lando basically retired on Bespin, and Leia talks about how they need allies from the Outer Rim, and Bespin's in the Outer Rim. I wouldn't be surprised if he's one of those allies, perhaps. I
believe he's still around because he was in Battlefront.
Yeah, that's true. I think we will be getting more like old school characters. Like maybe I know that they said that Crix Madine may have died in a really big bombing or an assassination attempt on a lot of New Republic officers and politicians, but I would like to see him come back. I would also like to see it, if it wasn't Snoke, I would like to see why was Palpatine investigating the unknown regions. Which, if it wasn't Snoke, what I would like to believe that Snoke wasn't the master, perhaps. And maybe he was just an apprentice to somebody, which would be something.
Yoda saying, is he the master or the apprentice?
Always two there are.
So I think we're going to wrap it up real soon. But before we do, we have the greatest segment in the history of segments. It is the one, the only Hype Factor. It's the Hype Factor. So we got Chris's thoughts on what he is most hyped about. Eric Wall Jr., what are you most hyped about?
I know that we talked about this in the pre-show and all before I had to leave, but how we heard that the Han Solo movie, first off, is staying where it is, and second off, that people are saying that it might be a disaster. I'm kind of hyped to see what they do with this, because it'll be the second anthology film. If it's a fun time, then it's a fun time. It's not that big of a deal. I'm looking at it that it's going to be a fun movie. I would like that.
Jeez, you're thinking more long term than I am.
Yeah. Well, the reason why is because I think somebody leaked earlier this week that we should be getting one in the next 2 weeks.
Wow.
I think it's somebody that has been right on a lot of occasions. So, yeah.
Wait, I would get one what in the next 2 weeks? Where are we getting?
A trailer. Sorry.
Oh, for Solo.
I didn't say trailer. Or maybe a cutout. Yeah. I would like to see a trailer for Solo. That's my biggest hype factor.
My hype factor is more immediate.
Mm-hmm.
My school's football team's playing in a bowl game in a couple days. We're gonna travel there, and we're gonna have a hoot of a time. We're gonna have a jolly time playing.
A time.
I'm in the marching band there. We're gonna be playing some fun stuff, and I'm also hyped just to have a week and a half break from everything. I've done a couple trips already, and I got this bowl trip, and just a lot of trips. Nice to not do much for a week and a half before school comes back. So I'm very hyped for that. And yeah, that's going to do it for the Backyard Watch podcast, episode 14. We are back. We are hyped. We are awesome. And it's a show hosted every Monday night at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific, usually live on Channel 1138 Mixler. And but that's not all where we are. We are also archived on the Channel 1138 YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/channel1138video. And you just type that into the URL. You go there, you see many of our previous episodes and archived stuff. See other things. See what's going on at Channel 1138. Some really cool stuff on there.
Yeah.
And we are also on some great social medias. We got the Backyard. We have the Facebook page, which is Backyard Watch. Just type in Backyard Watch, and you'll find us. Our Instagram is BYWPOD, BYW Pod. And our Twitter is also at BYWPod. And yeah, Eric occasionally posts some cool Porg stuff or some cool Star Wars memes. You never know what's going to happen. And it's a great way to find out, when we'll be broadcasting. And it's usually every Monday. Apologies that we were not broadcasting last week. I was driving back from Jedi Pod.
And I had a really bad headache last week, pounding headache. I get them from time to time.
That stinks.
Yeah.
But yeah, the plan is we will air on New Year's Day this coming Monday, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific, live on Channel 1138 Mixler.
Yep. And I'll be there as long as I am home.
And whether it's live or pre-recorded, that remains to be seen. It depends on what our plans are. So stay tuned for that. But no matter what, we'll be airing something next Monday. Mm-hmm. It's really cool. We're the only show still airing on Channel 1138. Wastelands is on. Okay, true. The SWU is airing tomorrow. I almost forgot about that before you told me, Eric. But Wastelands is on hiatus. A couple of their spin-off shows are on hiatus for the time being, and other than the SWU having their Boxing Day special this week, it's a pretty weird week for the channel. So, we were happy to broadcast for you all. This was recorded live on Christmas Day, so we wish happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, all that jazz
and
to
happy
everyone
Kwanzaa.
Listening. Happy Hanukkah, Happy Life Day. Is it Earth Day yet? No, wait, no. Every day's Earth Day.
I mean, it's not wrong.
And you have anything else to say, Eric, before we take off?
No, I'm good.
Well, have a good one, everyone. Stay hyped, and may the Force be with you. Bye-bye.